Debunked. Women leaders need more than just compassion as leaders, as well as to advance in their careers and get better results from their teams. So this is today's live is for you if you're a woman in leadership and you may be struggling with how to be more assertive or how to really you're struggling with commanding respect from your team, your peers, or your leaders. Maybe you're finding yourself overlooked and undervalued when it comes to the results and the value that you bring to your organization. And you keep seeing promotions pass you by, those special high profile projects that you really wanted to be interested in, or those strategic decisions that you wanted to be a part of and think you should have been a part of. They are just not within your realm of reach right now. If that's the case, then this is for you today, because we're going to talk a little right now specifically about compassion today. And I want to invite you also to join this week's masterclass happening on Thursday. That is all about elevating your executive presence, how to lead, the secret to lead with more authority and become that go-to leader for your organization without having to work harder, because I know that's the next step that usually happens with most of the women that I start working with is like, well, I want to get promoted. I want to take on a new strategic project to get more visibility, or I want to make a switch into a different industry and different role, different organization. So let me prove that I can do that by working more and more. So that is not what today is going to be all about. So let's talk about this compassion piece, because oftentimes we as women are celebrated for their ability to be compassionate, right? Create that team cohesion. We've also been pretty much conditioned since we were little to be more caring and nurturing for others, right? That's the role, the traditional role. I'm not saying this is the right way, but this is the traditional role that has been seen by society for women to take on more of that nurturing, caring, that compassion and empathy piece. So when it comes to leadership, it's understandable, I get it, that we still expect oftentimes those same traits, because the traits of being more assertive, demanding things get done, being that authoritative type of leader, we see that as a really good thing when it comes to men and their leadership. And we see it as a bad thing when it comes to women in their leadership. They all of a sudden be seen as bossy, even bitchy, just like really difficult to work for, while they might be actually taking the exact same actions and having the same behaviors as their male counterparts. Now, here's the thing that I get when it comes to really looking towards compassion as being a really key component of women's leadership. Yes, I am fully in agreement that both genders or all genders need to have that compassion piece in their leadership, because that compassion part is really a fundamental piece in terms of ensuring your team cohesion, ensuring a very collaborative culture within your organization. But here's the limit when that is one of the key things that for women is seen as a primary value that they bring in terms of leadership skills. And right now I'm just putting all of the achievements and the results that they get aside, but oftentimes what I've seen is that often, especially if teams are getting to be more difficult, they might bring in more a woman leader because, hey, you know what? Maybe they need a softer touch, as being said. Well, when that's the case and we value that leadership skill over all others, it does mean that there's other opportunities that are going to be missed for women as well as for organizations in order to be able to implement a different type of leadership style. Because let's just think about compassion in a couple of different ways, right? So when we talk about compassion and the more general perception that I get when I speak to clients about this topic of being compassionate and wanting to be a really great leader, their concerns are often driven by really wanting to be a good leader for their team, to ensure that their team members are making sure that they have their workload is balanced, right? That they're enjoying their work. In essence, almost working towards ensuring that they have a great employee engagement score. But what is a missing component often that is overlooked with regards to compassion is also making sure that when you are working to understand and support your team members, there also needs to be a portion of accountability, but also a portion of putting the responsibility of the actions, the tasks, the outcomes with the right person. And that doesn't mean, if you are wanting to be a very compassionate leader, that you are taking all of the responsibility for your team, your colleagues, your peers, or your leaders onto yourself. It means that you need to hold those accountable that have that responsibility. And one of the when I look at Brene Brown, she's done a lot of research in terms of compassion and leading, etc. Well, when it comes to, for example, the other aspect of compassion, and the reason I bring up Brene Brown is she shares about how the most compassionate people are also the ones with the most boundaries. So, what does that translate towards when we're talking about compassionate and compassion in leadership? Well, how I have interpreted that and how I see the most of my clients and the successful women that do go on to becoming the sought after strategic leader is that with the boundaries they put in place, that means that they are very clearly communicating their expectations, but they're holding their teams accountable. And when someone doesn't meet those expectations, or for example, the other word for expectations could be the boundaries that have been set, right? The game rules in essence, then they do take that time and they switch out their leadership to be more into more that assertive type of leadership where they are calling out that behavior. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not compassionate, because they have been supporting their team members throughout. It's simply a bit of a switch in terms of what style is needed at what moment. So I really want to encourage you, if you're a woman in leadership and you're advancing your career, or you're looking at yourself going, I really want to take that next level step, is to really consider that compassion should not be the only and the main source of your leadership style. Because here's the other mistake that I often see is the compassionate piece of your leadership is essentially confused with more of a people pleasing tendency, right? We want to support your teams, but in that wanting to be supportive of your team member, wanting to be supportive of your colleagues, you end up taking on a lot of their responsibility, or really people pleasing them. I'm like, okay, well, if you don't like that, then I'll take that, but you can do this part. Or, hey, oh, don't worry about if the deadline doesn't work. I'll figure something else out. Rather than really holding essentially their feet to the fire and saying, okay, this is the expectations. These are what are your responsibilities. So how can I help you ensure that you can get this done? Notice there's a more of a shift there. It's not about you taking on more. It's more about how can you support? What kind of resources can you provide? But you keep the responsibility with that person. So when we look at different skills beyond just that need to be compassionate, because hey, you know what? I really love being that compassionate people oriented leader. It does lead to a, what do you call it? Almost a shortage in terms of what you can serve, in terms of the responsibility that you have to your business and to your overall team for the results that need to be generated. And what you find is if you're really relying on a lot of compassion, and it can lead to a lot of challenges in your decision making, right? Because you're like, oh man, well, if I make that decision, then that team member and that colleague, they're not going to like that. They're not going to be okay with that decision. So it means that you end up pulling back from decisions, or you kind of become indecisive for a really long time. It means also that at times there can be a lack of respect simply because people begin to understand that they can kind of bowl over you. They can come in and they can just do whatever they want, because you are going to you are more focused on being compassionate rather than really leading from your perspective. So what are some skills? Now, I'm going to share a few little insider tips from within my Leadership Edge formula. So, and we're going to talk about number one, about assertiveness and decision making. Now, when you are more assertive, this doesn't mean you're standing there yelling and screaming or telling everyone exactly what they need to do and what steps they have to take, etc. Assertiveness is really being very clear in your expectations and setting your boundaries. So understanding what a behavior, what results, what outcomes are acceptable and communicating them clearly. And then holding your team members, colleagues, peers accountable if they, go through or they don't meet those expectations or they blow past your boundaries. Number two is around looking at that decision making. So really look to make timely and well-informed decisions so that you can, I think we're up to three right now. Third one I want you to think about is really strategic thinking and vision. This is where you're going to look, especially as a leader, and especially if you want to continue to advance and grow in your role, is to look at the long-term vision and planning and the ability to see future trends and challenges. That is going to and create that vision so that you can it's like that, that north star for your team, for your organization, where everyone can buy into. And will you get everyone's buy-in? Not likely. However, if you can get the majority of people to buy in, you're going to see a really great shift within your team, within your department, within your business unit, and within your company as well. And lastly, look at towards effective communication skills. So again, you want to be very clear and assertive in the way that you communicate, when you share ideas, when you're giving feedback, when you're asking for and giving advice, when you're leading teams. Make the communication the part and the words that you choose and how you communicate that to be more in that assertive vein when it needs to, right? You're going to have opportunities. For example, if there's something playing in with your team member and it's in their personal, that will call likely for a more compassionate tone, communication, etc. However, when we're coming up to performance review time, if you're having a performance review, then this is going to need to have a little more of that clear and assertive type of communication in there. Now, you might be going, okay, well, these are all really great, but theory is fantastic, but really, where does it get me in practice? Well, let's look at, for example, Jacinda Ardern. So Jacinda Ardern, she's just recently stopped being the PM of New Zealand, of course, but she was really well known for the compassion that she brought in her leadership, as well as being really unwaveringly decisive to yourself. Well, I really want to be, that compassionate leadership is much more my own type of style. How do I really get to be more authoritative or even more assertive? Then that is where it's asking you to really to step out of your comfort zone in a sense, but to also adapt and gain new skills in how you want to lead. Now, I'm going to share all of this as well as so much more in my masterclass that's coming up on Thursday this week. So you can still get a spot for that. The spots are going to be limited for this masterclass and they are filling up quickly. So if you're interested in that, make sure you can either DM me Elevate and I will get you the details, or click on the link somewhere around this video and grab your spot right now. It's going to be 90 minutes packed full of value, insight, all about how you can take your current leadership and how you can elevate your executive presence or your leadership presence, whichever way you want to talk about it. Because oftentimes, so much of what we're missing is we're avoiding that assertiveness. We're avoiding conflicts. And oh my goodness, we haven't even talked today about self-promotion. All of that plus so much more is going to be in the masterclass on Thursday. So if you want to get into the masterclass, elevate your executive presence, the secrets to leading with more authority and becoming that go-to leader without having to work harder, then DM me Elevate, or again, register in the link around this video, either above or below the video. So let's just kind of recap here very briefly what we talked about. Where it comes to, there is this myth that we need to stop, that you need to be as a woman, compassionate leadership is going to be your key to success as you move forward. It doesn't work that way. Yes, you can still be compassionate, except we need to find a more balance. So rather than expecting, and this, of course, there's a lot of stereotypes in this, that where women are recognized much more for their compassion type of leadership. Women were seen as really great leaders throughout the COVID because of their ability to be more compassionate and have more empathy for their team members. However, this doesn't mean that that's a get out of jail free card, that you can avoid becoming more, needing that more assertive or authoritative type of leadership styles at different times throughout. So, what are your essential skills? Again, bringing this in from my leadership edge formula. This is all to do with being deciding and belonging, creating more that assertiveness skill as well as a decision making. You want to be also create that strategic thinking and vision, and also have these really strong, effective, and clear, concise, and assertive communication skills. So, if all of that in a nutshell sounds really interesting, you're like, oh, I really want to know more, because this is an area that I struggle with, or that it's going okay. And yet I really want to make 2024 a different type of year. I want 2024 to advance my career. I want to get a promotion. I want to be able to have that opportunity for that next strategic project that comes up. I want to be in the room where the key strategic decisions are being made. Then you want to get in on my masterclass this week, starting on Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Central European Time. DM me Elevate, or of course, again, click the link around this video and grab your spot today, because there are going to be I can't believe the amount of value and gold that is going to be dropped in that masterclass on Thursday. So that's definitely something that you want to get in on. If you've got any other questions, as always, feel free to DM me your questions. I'm happy to answer some questions in the chat, in the DMs. I have had lots of women reaching out with different questions throughout the weeks and the months. So feel free to ask your questions, and I am happy to support you there as well. So looking forward to, I'm going to see you on Thursday. And again, DM me Elevate, or check and click the link and grab your spot today. Thanks so much for listening. And if you got lots of value, or you have other questions, or something resonated with you, then drop just a comment below the video and let me know what resonated for you today and what is the next step you're going to be taking. All right. Wishing you all a great day.